setting sail from Genoa with a chest of gold and medicines to join the Grecian fight for liberty. Sailing slowly southwards past the volcanic islands and out beyond the heel of Italy. It was as if 10 long years were lifted from his shoulders. He felt like he was young again, and Byron then remembered the springtime of his manhood and the women who had loved him there. After 20 days on board, they saw the mountains of Morea rising wreathed in cloud above the sea. And Byron came on deck then to catch sight of the country where he thought he could well meet his destiny. Everyone was watching on the Isle of Kefalonia when Byron's boat moored at Augustali. Through telescopes and glasses, they viewed the noble poet whose life had now become legendary.
In a sense, Byron's journey to Greece began some years before he actually set out. In Ravenna, in 1819, after he had tasted all the pleasures Venice had to offer, a new direction opened up for him. He found himself getting involved in the movement for Italian independence, represented by a group of young dissident aristocrats, the Carbonari. A fragment he wrote in Ravenna, light-hearted enough, but with an underlying seriousness, testifies to a sense of responsibility for movements for independence outside the land of his birth.
When there is no freedom to fight for at home, let one combat for that of one's neighbours, and think of the glory of Greece and of Rome, and get knocked on the head for one's labours. When there is no freedom to fight for at home, let one combat for that of one's neighbours, and think of the glories of Greece and of Rome, and get knocked on the head for one's labours.
Byron was pitting himself against the prevailing political order. Italy was neither independent or united, being separated into different parts, dominated by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Byron told a visitor, "Just think of a constitution established on this side of the Alps, but such nationalist dreams would have to wait 40 years for Garibaldi to achieve them." The year of 1820 saw mounting political tension in Ravenna. "We are on the verge of a row here," he wrote. "Last night they have overwritten all the city walls with 'Up the Republic,' etc., etc. The police is all on the alert, and the cardinal glares pale through all his purple." Tension continued to rise. Just before Christmas, Byron heard shots in the street and went out to find the military commandant of the town lying there fatally wounded. He was a brave officer, but an unpopular man, he wrote home. Despite the fact that he was a political opponent, he had him brought into his apartments to be tended by a surgeon. That winter, on the day before his 33rd birthday, he wrote, "I go to my bed with a heaviness of heart at having lived so long and to so little purpose." Back in England, his friends were embarking on great public careers, and though he was a world-famous poet, he was somehow not satisfied with his achievements. In the spring, the projected uprising against Austrian domination collapsed. The Carbonari were waiting for a lead from Naples, but in March 1821, Austrian troops occupied the city and put an end to the revolt. The Carbonari hastily returned their weapons to Byron's palace. "I suppose they consider me a depot," he had written, "to be sacrificed in case of accidents. It is no matter. Only think, a free Italy. Why, there has been nothing like it since the days of Augustus." The fiasco helped him to identify the key factor in the defeat of the Italian insurrection, the lack of unity among the Italians themselves. In Greece, he would see the chief contribution he could make as building unity among the different Greek forces. Byron was also involved in a relationship with the young Contessa Teresa Guiccioli, who he had met in Venice. To his amusement, he had actually been offered the top floor of her aging husband's palace in Ravenna. They conducted their relationship while he was away on business or having a nap. This arrangement had broken down. Teresa's father successfully petitioned the Pope to grant her a decree of separation. This was granted, but with a condition. Teresa would have to stay in her father's household. Now, if the authorities in Ravenna, increasingly anxious at Byron's political involvement, wanted to get rid of him, all they had to do was exile Teresa's father, Count Gamba. Teresa would have to go with him, and Byron, they calculated, would soon follow. This is exactly what happened. After the failed uprising, Count Gamba and his son Pietro, both members of the Carbonari, were banished from Romagna. While they took refuge with Teresa in Florence, Byron cast around for a new location where they could all settle down again. With Shelley's help, the town of Pisa was decided on. After several months of delay, Byron set off for his new home.
Lord Byron was a-travelling, while ahead his fame did run.
Lock up your daughters, or keep them chaperoned. He's mad, he's bad, he's dangerous to know. their daughters sneaked a glimpse through the window anyway.
At the head of 5 coach loads, 9 horses followed on the road, with an Egyptian falcon and a monkey. There were 5 fine cackling geese he hadn't had the heart to eat, and a bulldog and a mastiff.
His accountant was coiled like a snake on his money chest. His 4-poster bed was adorned with his family crest, which read from Norman times, trust Byron.
Not all his ladies would agree.
I have simplified my politics into an utter detestation of all governments. Gin and water is the source of all my inspiration. God will not always be a Tory.
He thought that the poet laureate was a turncoat and a fool. He satirized him in his verse and challenged him to a duel.
When Byron arrived in Pisa, the Greek War of Independence had been underway since the spring, when a Greek army had marched on northern Greece. Massacres of Greeks in Turkey and Turks in Greece followed. Byron's first journey to Greece, in 1810, had left him with a clear picture of the actual condition the Greek people lived under. They were ruled by Turkish occupiers, existing as second-class citizens, divided under different warlords, with little conception of Greek nationhood. He had encountered the mountain tribes of the Suliots, who had heroically resisted the Turks, leaving him with a lasting impression of their courage. He had been in Athens when Lord Elgin was stripping the Parthenon of its sculptures. He had responded with his first truly radical poem, The Curse of Minerva, a fierce attack on British colonialism. When he arrived in Pisa, these memories would have stirred. There were Greek exiles there. Shelley was completing his poem Hellas, inspired by the Greek uprising, and Mary Shelley had translated the Greek Declaration of Independence for the London newspapers. During the winter, Byron talked to Shelley's cousin Tom Medwin about his long-term plan to go to Greece. "I mean to return to Greece," he said, "and shall, in all probability, die there." As in Ravenna, eventually he found himself being forced out of Pisa. A brawl in the street with a dragoon had been blamed on Teresa's family, and they were banished from Tuscany. Again, he would have to follow. Almost simultaneously, Shelley was drowned while returning from a journey to establish their long-planned journal, leaving him with a new set of responsibilities. The editor Leigh Hunt and his family, the journal itself, Teresa, and the remnants of the Pisan circle. He said he would stand in Shelley's place, but it would prove difficult. In this atmosphere, he resumed work on his great poem, Don Juan. He had left behind the heroics of his bestseller, Childe Harold, and had begun to write in a new, more conversational way. It began, "I want a hero, an uncommon want, when every year and month sends forth a new one. Till, after cloying the gazettes with cant, the age discovers he is not the true one." Thus he launched the adventures of Don Juan, a satirical comic masterpiece, but with a feeling for what was truly moving or noble. But he would immediately undercut such passages. "But I am apt to grow too metaphysical. The time is out of joint, and so am I. I quite forget this poem's merely quizzical, and deviate into matters rather dry." Then he would pull himself up. "So on I rambled, now and then narrating, now pondering. It is time we should narrate. And so he would continue, perhaps finishing a section. I feel my brain turn round, and all my fancies whirling like a mill, which is a signal to my nerves and brain to take a quiet ride in some green lane. After leaving Pisa, they all settled in Genoa. The first issue of the journal sold well, though Leigh Hunt's brother John, the publisher, was indicted for blasphemous libel. Byron funded his defence, another responsibility for him. But it soon became clear the journal was going to be a commercial failure. It would eventually only last 4 issues. During the late winter of 1823, Byron was visited by 2 emissaries from the London Greek Committee, a support group for the Greek cause. Their visit awakened the political idealism bequeathed to him by his mother, which, despite Byron's flippant exterior, had never been extinguished.
The mountains look on Marathon, and Marathon looks on the sea, and musing there, an hour alone, I dreamed that Greece might still be free. The mountains look on Marathon, and Marathon looks on the sea, musing there, an hour alone, I dreamed that Greece might still be free. Yet freedom, yet thy banner torn but flying, streets like the thunderstorm against the wind. Yet freedom, yet thy banner torn but flying, streets like the thunderstorm against the wind. The dead have been awakened, shall I sleep? The world's at war with tyrants, shall I crouch? The harvest's ripened, shall I pause to reap? I slumber not, the thorn is in my couch. Each day a trumpet soundeth, its echo in my thy banner torn but flying, streets like the thunderstorm against the wind. Yet freedom, yet thy banner torn but flying, streets like the thunderstorm against the wind. The mountains look on Marathon, and Marathon looks on the sea, musing there, an hour alone, I dreamed that Greece might still be free.
And so, Byron decided to support the Greek insurrection in person. As he made his preparations, chartering a boat and setting his finances in order, visitors from his past arrived in Genoa. One of them, Lady Blessington, called on him and left a record of their conversations.
I arrived in Genoa in the spring of 1823, a city whose attractions were greatly increased by the residence there of Lord Byron. I had expected to find him dignified, cold and haughty, but he could not have been more different. Indeed, were I to point out the most prominent defect of his lordship, I should say it was a certain flippancy, a total absence of the dignity and self-possession that should characterise a man of birth and education. But I could hardly turn him down when he offered to show me all the sights around Genoa, and we started riding out in the afternoons. As we rode, people would come up to us. The Italians seemed to know and like him, and trust in his sympathy when they recounted their affairs. Our favourite spot soon became a green meadow from which we could see the white city of Genoa sloping down to the sea, which glistened in the spring sunlight.
You see, Lady Blessington, here is my old friend, the blue Mediterranean. Genoa is certainly a fine spot, and has the great advantage of having so few English resident here.
Really, Byron, surely you have some affection for your countrymen?
The English are intended by nature to be good, sober-minded people, and those who live in the country are really admirable. But as for exclusive London society, there is just dissipation without wit, an endless round of frivolous amusements, and above all, it is riddled with hypocrisy, which I detest.
My dear Byron, you are very harsh today. You must have some good memories of the time.
Well, perhaps I will admit to a few. There was a time, Lady Blessington, when the number of anonymous love letters and portraits I received, and all from English ladies, would be enough to fill a large volume.
What a scandal those days were.
Yes, I used to say, I wish that womankind had one big rosy mouth, so I could kiss her all at once, from north to south. But now I have arrived at years of discretion, and would rather fall in the sea than fall in love.
My dear Byron, I can hardly make you out. It's almost impossible to judge whether you are serious or not.
To tell the truth, I have come to the conclusion that I have no character at all. I am everything by turns and nothing long. There are only two sentiments to which I am constant, a strong love of liberty and a detestation of hypocrisy, and neither are calculated to win me any friends.
It surprises me that you never took your career in Parliament any further.
No. I regard politics as the art of concealing one half of the truth and distorting the other. I was not made to be a politician. I was born for opposition. I could never have adhered to any party or taken part in the petty intrigues of cabinets or parliamentary men. Perhaps if I had never travelled, never left my country young, my views would have been more limited. As it is, they extend to the good of mankind in general, of the world at large.
And so is that why you're going up to Greece?
Partly. A man should do more for his fellows than scribble verses.
But why go to Greece? Everyone says the Greeks are avaricious, untrustworthy and divided.
My dear Countess, these are mainly the tales of disappointed adventurers. Some Greeks are debased by centuries of slavery, but the hardy Greek peasant has qualities that redeem the whole population.
You have a fine nature, Byron, in spite of all the weeds that have sprung up in it.
Touché, my dear Countess.
Weeds or not, I hope you will return to England before you set off.
No. The English treat their celebrated men as they do their climate. They abuse them among themselves, only defending them out of national pride if attacked by strangers. Are not the most popular people in society those who have no qualities to excite envy? I would be driven again from the shores of Britain, and with even more ignominy than before. But if I live, and return from Greece with something more than the reputation of a poet, perhaps opinions will change.
I sincerely hope you will return.
When I was a boy, a teller of fortunes advised me to beware of my 37th year. That year almost certainly will be spent in Greece.
Surely you don't believe in all that superstition, Byron. You of all people, the great scoffer at all things.
To say the truth, I find it equally hard to know what to believe in this world and what not to. But there is something calm and soothing to me in the thought of death, and the only time I feel repugnance to it is on a fine day in a beautiful country, when all nature seems to be rejoicing in light and life.
On a day, in truth, remarkably like this.
Yes. But if I did die in Greece, I have flattered no ruling powers, nor concealed a single thought that tempted me. I just hope it may be in action, for I have a great horror of deathbed scenes. But you have reminded me, Countess, I have many preparations to make and letters to write. Let us turn back. I hope you will enjoy your visit to Italy. I advise you to cultivate the acquaintance of the women here, for they are frank, good-natured, and natural, and have none of the affectation and malice of our most polished countrywomen. And my dear Lady Blessington, a final word. Never succumb to the stupid, bigoted contempt of the English for everything foreign.
At last, in July 1823, he bade Teresa farewell, leaving her to be comforted by Mary Shelley. He gave her some of the original cantos from Don Juan, saying, "Take them, who knows, one day they may be prized." He entrusted the publication of the completed 12 cantos to John Hunt. He had finally broken with his old publisher, John Murray. He was taking with him £2,000 in cash and letters of credit for another 7,000. As he said, "There may be prisoners to ransom, cash to advance, or if I was to take an angry turn one sulky morning, a troop of my own to raise and maintain." Accompanying him were Trelawney, 2 doctors, and Teresa's brother, Pietro, who he had described as wild for liberty. Defiantly, he embarked on the 13th of the month, only to be becalmed and to have to return to shore that evening. Finally, though, the journey got under way. When Byron reached Kefalonia, then under a British mandate, he settled in the village of Metaxita to decide his next move. The Greeks were divided into factions, each of which knew his prestige and money would strengthen their position against the others. They arrived in turn, each flattering him, running their rivals down and asking him to join them. To all of these requests, Byron said, I replied that I had come to join not a faction, but a nation. Byron found that he had been abandoned by the London Greek Committee, who back in Genoa had promised they would join up with him. He had to fall back on his own resources. I was a fool to come here, he said, but being here, I must see what is to be done. Finally, he decided to throw in his lot with the Greek provisional government in western Greece, based in Missolonghi. He had struck up an unlikely friendship with a missionary doctor, James Kennedy, who came to bid him farewell shortly before his departure.
Lord Byron's arrival on Kefalonia had caused a great sensation. Rumours of his misanthropy, profligacy, and infidelity had swept through the island. We knew, too, of his long warfare against our most distinguished literary characters, as well as against the government and religion of his native country. Many years before I had taken the name and profession of a Christian, and I had offered to answer any objections from any quarter. Lord Byron attended a number of the meetings that I held. I said I hoped he would be converted. He said he hoped so too. But I found that while he had a good knowledge of the Bible, even correcting me on occasions, he had no understanding of the Scriptures as a means to salvation. In the end I was unable to convince him, but we had formed a friendship, I must say, and I was sorry to be calling on him to say goodbye.
Dr. Kennedy, welcome. I have greatly enjoyed our discussions, and also the opportunity to hear a Scots voice so far from home.
Perhaps, my lord, as you are about to depart, we should sing Auld Lang Syne.
Oh no, Doctor. It would take me straight back to my boyhood home. The deep salmon pool by the Black Bridge in Aberdeen. I remember it as if it were yesterday.
I am half a Scot by birth, and bred a whole one. Auld Lang Syne brings Scotland one and all. Scotch plaid, Scotch nudes, the blue hills and clay streams, the Dee, the Don, Balgownie, Briggs, Black Wall. All my boy feelings, all my gentler dreams, floating past me. You may remember in her youthful fit, I railed at Scots to show my wrath and wit, and yet I scotched, not killed, the Scotsman in my blood. I love the land of mountain and of flood. I am half the Scot by birth, and bred a whole one. Old Lang Syne brings Scotland one hand on. Scotch plaid, Scotch snoods, the blue hills and clear streams, the Dee, the Don, Balgownie, Briggs, Blackwall. All my boy feelings, all my gentle dreams, floating past me. This childishness of mine comes back with old Lang Syne.
Have you heard, my lord, that our discussions have become a matter of controversy amongst the townspeople here? As a Methodist, I regret to say they have been making wagers on the result.
Even after all our discussions, I am still doubtful. I admire the humane and liberal principles that Christ laid down, and if they were truly adhered to, they would certainly make a difference in the world. But all too often I am fully persuaded religion is just a mask that covers villainy. You see, I am attacked on all sides, in magazines and reviews, and also in the pulpit. They reckon me a black sheep, but I simply do not believe myself so bad a Christian as those who preach against me with the greatest fury. They furnish the suspicion that they are latent hypocrites. Else, why not use gentler and more Christian methods?
I do not commend their conduct, but surely your own writings encourage their attacks. In Don Juan, the hero goes on, prosperous and uncontrolled, from one vice to another. There are no virtuous characters, and the wicked are never punished.
Donny Johnny may be bawdy, but is it not good English? It may be profligate, but is it not life? Could any man have written it who had not lived in the world? Actually, I maintain it is the most moral of poems, but if people will not discover the moral, that is their fault, not mine. Its purpose is to remove the cloak that society throws over its secret sins. Perhaps, Dr. Kennedy, I am assisting you in my own way, by convincing people of their depravity, so that your doctrines can be thrown in to all the greater effect.
That is ingenious, my lord, but it will not do. You never show a way forward for the sinner. You never say, read the scriptures and repent.
I take no joy from my unsettled ideas on religion, but I cannot help feeling still that Christianity is not the best source of inspiration for a poet. It shuts out metaphysics, nature, and speculations on the origins of the world. Well, Doctor, I fear this is our farewell, for I have finally decided on my next move. I am going to cross the straits to the mainland and base myself in Missolonghi, where part of the Greek forces are concentrated. Everybody in London has been expecting me to rush straight to Greece and die gloriously on the battlefield. But I must be prudent. I must see my resources are directed to the best possible effect.
You are too soft-hearted to go into that den of wolves.
4 centuries of slavery cannot help but make a mark. Time and better treatment will work a cure. So, Dr. Kennedy, farewell. I have encountered many hypocrites in religion, but in you I have seen a man who lives up to the principles he professes.
Goodbye, my lord. I wish you luck. For my part, you have complained that many Christians have inveighed against you. You may be sure that there is at least one who will not do so.
Byron arrived in Missolonghi to an ecstatic welcome. The townspeople regarded him as a saviour. The women, wrote Pietro, stood at their balconies, clothed in their most magnificent dresses, and saluted him as he passed. It had been a hard journey from Kefalonia, but he was immediately plunged into his new life. As Pietro continued, he had scarcely time to refresh himself and converse with the Greek leadership before he was assailed by the tumultuous visits of the primates and chiefs. They all arrived together, each one with a suite of 20 or 30, and not infrequently 50 soldiers. There were tensions between the townspeople, the troops of the provisional government, the foreign volunteers, and the refugee Suliot warriors. There were tribal divisions. The provisional government had no money, and on top of all this, civil war broke out between the competing Greek factions. "I don't know why we left Italy," complained William Fletcher, Byron's valet, "where we had everything, to come here where we have nothing." "You take a hog's eye view of the world," responded Byron, and he set about trying to establish a direction. He genuinely liked the Suliots and established a troop of 300 from their ranks. They began drilling in front of his headquarters. Byron's presence helped in the negotiation of a loan in London for the provisional government. He saw his role as helping to unite the Greeks and consolidate their position so that when the loan arrived, they could go on the attack. And the poet who had written, "The drying of a single tear has more of honest fame than shedding seas of gore," also returned 25 Turkish prisoners, including women and children, to the Turkish governor of neighbouring Patras. He hoped the act of mercy might be reciprocated on the Turkish side towards Greek prisoners. "When the dictates of humanity are in question," he wrote, "I know no difference between Turks and Greeks." In view of the long animosity between Greece and Turkey, it was a significant intervention. During his boyhood in Aberdeen, one of the first books to fire his imagination had been on the history of the Ottoman Empire, and after he had sprung to fame, he had written his Oriental tales, infused with themes gathered from his first journey to the East. He had good memories of the Turks. "I used to like them when among them," he wrote. He had come to Greece not out of racial hatred, not out of religious motives, but to support the principles of national freedom. An attack on Lepanto was planned, and the imminent arrival of artillery officer William Parry, with the Congreve rockets that had a fearsome reputation, was eagerly anticipated. But his arrival, with the rockets in boxes, needing at least 2 months' work to put them together, confounded the expectation of the Suliots. Their leader suddenly announced they would not fight against stone walls, and the attack was off. That evening, Byron was having supper with some English volunteers, disappointed and annoyed, but joking. He had been looking forward to becoming a general for the first time. "I have at least one quality of a good general," he said. "Being lame, I could not easily run away." Suddenly, he went into convulsions, became speechless, and then fainted. He was carried upstairs to recover. Half an hour later, there came news that there was an uprising in the town, and his protectors rushed out, leaving Byron helpless in his bed. At this point, 2 German volunteers, who had forced their way into his house, entered his room. They were worse the wear for drink, waving their arms around and shouting in German that the Suliots had risen and the arsenal had been stormed. Dr. Bruno shouted back at them in Italian. Harold Nicholson, in his book The Last Journey, conjured up the scene. To Byron's fuddled consciousness, the scene, in the damp and ill-lit room, adjusted itself gradually to a vague turmoil of confusion, helplessness, and terror. And above and behind it all came the sound of rain pouring relentlessly on the roof, and splashing from the gutters upon the mire of the yard below. He got up next day. His doctors applied leeches, but by putting one too close to an artery caused him to bleed heavily. It was only action by William Parry, who had become a friend and confidant, that saved him. The epileptic fit had shaken him. Many urged him to leave Missolonghi to recuperate, but he refused, saying, "There is a cause worth millions, such as I am, and while I can stand at all, I must stand by the cause." Soon, Missolonghi was again in tumult. A Suliot warrior, trying to force his way into the arsenal, killed the Swedish guard who tried to restrain him. He was arrested. The Suliots surrounded the arsenal. All hell threatened to break loose. The Suliot chiefs were summoned to Byron's house. They arrived in their full national dress to find Byron, according to Parry, in his full dress as colonel of the brigade. Parry never forgot the electrifying confrontation and the dignified way in which Byron, weakened by his fit, faced the Suliot chieftains down. They were all fine-looking men, and all being animated by this unfortunate event, formed as fine a picture as the eye could well behold. Through the medium of an interpreter, calmness was gradually restored, and the chiefs pledged themselves that justice would be done. They got up, put on their shoes, made a profound obeisance to Lord Byron, and retired to restore quiet among their soldiers. Did his spirit break at this point? Did he give up hope for the cause he had adopted? Not exactly. He told Pietro, "I begin to fear that I have done nothing but lose time, patience, money, and health." But continued, "I was prepared for it. I knew that ours was not a path of roses. I did not come here in search of tranquility." To someone else he said, "It was better being at Missolonghi than going about talking and singing at parties in London, like Tom Moore." But there were further setbacks. Flooded rivers and impassable roads meant he could not attend a conference to sort out differences between the Greek factions. And the final act of treachery by a Greek warlord that threatened to deliver Missolonghi into Turkish hands re-emphasized the disunity amongst the Greeks. In the second week of April, he was cheered by letters arriving from England, one with good news of his daughter, another reporting that negotiations for the loan were nearly completed. He and Pietro went out riding, only to be caught in a torrential downpour. That evening he felt weak and feverish, but still went out riding the next day. That night a fever took hold. "I have a great horror of deathbed scenes," he had told Lady Blessington. His own doctors turned his sickbed into his deathbed. They repeatedly entreated him to allow himself to be bled. Finally his resistance cracked, and they took 2 pints of blood from him. They then bled him twice more, and were surprised when his condition did not improve. He went to sleep and woke to find the room full of weeping people. "I must die. I feel it," he said. William Parry wrote, "I had a sense of deep sorrow to see him thus perishing, far from his home, far from all the comforts due to his rank and situation, far too from every fond and affectionate heart. The sirocco blew and the rain fell with tropical violence. His deplorable room was watertight, but that was the only solace it provided." His last words were recorded by those around him. "Why did I not go home before I came here? Why was I not aware of this sooner? Poor town, my poor servants, poor Greece. Now I give her my life. What more could I do? Forward, courage, follow my example. Do not be afraid. Shall I sue for mercy? Come now, no weakness. Let us be a man to the last. Io lascio qualche cosa di caro nel mondo." I want to go to sleep now. He slept for 24 hours, and then, as a storm broke over Missolonghi, he opened and closed his eyes for the last time.
But I have lived, and have not lived in vain. My mind may has its force, my blood its fire. But there is that within me which shall tire. Torture and time, and breathe when I expire. Like the remembered tone of a mute lyre.
The news of his death rippled across Europe. Someone commented that it came upon London like a thunderbolt. The young Tennyson left his Lincolnshire home and wrote, "Byron is dead upon a rock," as if he had to see it there to believe it. Teresa was in bed when she was told. She was silent, turned her head away, and that was all. She had known, perhaps, he would never return. Byron's body was embalmed and returned to England. The poet John Clay was in Oxford Street, watching as his funeral train set off for the family vault near Newstead. He heard a young girl, dark and beautiful, say, "Poor Lord Byron," and noticed how people moved in saddened silence, knowing that the mighty had fallen. He thought that amounted to a better tribute than all the empty honours of the powerful, and London's aristocratic families were ambivalent. They sent coaches to follow the procession but dared not attend in person, scared off by Byron's reputation. Mary Shelley, now back in England, watched his hearse leaving London up Highgate Hill. After Byron's death, a Turkish general said, "We are no longer fighting the Greeks, but all Europe," recognizing how it had galvanized European opinion. Missolonghi was now a household word, and when it fell to the Turks in 1826, public pressure in Europe contributed to the decision to send a fleet to the area. At the Battle of Navarino the following year, the Turkish and allied Egyptian fleets were destroyed, and Greece in effect became free. Independence was formally declared in 1832. Byron's intervention, even though apparently ending in failure, had in the end helped to secure its object, national freedom for Greece. Much later, an unsympathetic historian would write that Byron's spirit fled shrieking from the advances of the 19th century. In some ways, he did become dated. The exotic heroes of his poetry were supplanted by Dickens' down-to-earth characters, and his unashamed sexuality was hardly taken as a model for the Victorian era. What is more, his criticism of what he called this mania for collecting colonies was certainly not heeded in the high noon of British Empire. But in other ways, his spirit hung heavy over the age and beyond. He had understood the historic shift from empire to nation-state. He embodied the spirit of freedom that rang out through the 19th century, and was heeded from Greece to Italy, on to France, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, and the Americas. And in the 20th, he went on to inspire political opposites, from Winston Churchill to the International Brigades. Now, in the 21st, when global issues call us beyond nationalism, we can admire his reading of the grain of history and his commitment to bringing the new world into being. After Byron's hearse had passed out of sight, Mary Shelley thought back to the time when she and Shelley were renting their house near Pisa only 3 short years before. "What should I have said to a Cassandra then?" she wrote. "Who prophesied that Jane and I, with Shelley and Ned gone, should watch the funeral procession of Lord Byron up Highgate Hill?" She knew that the era of the young romantics had ended. We know they had left us with a resource of the spirit upon which we can still draw.
So